Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me in the Bettor's Box. It's BangTheBook.com's MLB betting podcast for Thursday, April 4th. I am your host, Adam Burke. This and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Got the Monday, Thursday format here with the Bettor's Box. On Mondays, I do the Monday mailbag at Skating Tripods on Twitter or Adam at BangTheBook.com to send in your questions for the mailbag. Also, I get this question a lot. How do I sign up for the notes for the Bettor's Box? Email me, Adam at BangTheBook.com. I'll get you on the list for those notes. I'll send those out usually about mid-afternoon or so. I certainly want everyone to listen to the show as opposed to just get the information from the notes, so I give it a few hours before I send out that email. But Adam at BangTheBook.com, the way you get on the notes for the Bettor's Box. My daily picks and tips piece, it's been very, very up and down here so far. We've had some pretty bad days. We've had some pretty good days. We've had a lot of days in the middle, but still grinding every single day over there at BangTheBook.com. Subscribe to notifications at the website. You'll be able to get a quick update when my picks and tips piece has been updated for the day, already up for today, obviously. Usually I'll have that done by about 10:30-ish on weekdays, maybe 11:30 or so on weekends. I know that's tough with the shortened lead time for the day games on the weekends, but mostly follow my wife's work schedule, so when she gets up for during the week, I get up, and then on weekends, I usually get up a little bit earlier than she does, but try to catch up on sleep as much as I possibly can over the weekend. So, again, a little bit delayed with the weekend updates for the picks and tips piece, but weekdays usually by 10:30 or so. Speaking of daily picks, make sure you're checking out Kyle Hunter's thoughts here for the remainder of the college basketball season. Also, of course, Parker Michaels, who's wrapping up a strong regular season in the NHL. He'll be rolling through the playoffs with us as well with those daily picks. If you missed yesterday's edition of Bang the Book Radio, I talked to Kyle Hunter about the Final Four and the national championship game. So you definitely want to make sure that you check that out. Monday, I'll have another edition of the Bettor's Box along with the Monday mailbag. And then Tuesday, Brian Blessing will join me. We'll chat NHL playoffs a little bit. And then also the Masters for the first major of the PGA Tour season. So once again, like I said yesterday during the segment with Kyle, Bang the Book Radio is not going away, but we'll do the Monday, Thursday Bettor's Box. We'll do the UFC segments on either Thursday or Friday with Christian Pina. Then we'll do some one-off stuff for the NFL draft, for college football season win totals, the Masters, other major golf events, stuff like that, horse racing, the Kentucky Derby events. So we'll still have some stuff out there for you. It just won't be a daily thing. All right, so let's get into the Bettor's Box here for today. We'll start with a look beyond the box score. Then I'll go down the lines, give you a pick for Thursday night, and then preview the weekend ahead here. Got a lot of series previews to talk about at the end of today's show. So that'll kind of make up for some of the lack of information at the outset because, look, we're only 1 week into the season. So we're still waiting for sample sizes to get bigger, still waiting to be able to dig in some more to the team exit velocity metrics and things of that sort. So we'll give it some time. I'll have a lot more numbers-based information as we get deeper in the month of April and then plenty of it as we get into May and throughout the rest of the Bettor's Box. So just hold your horses on that. We'll get to a lot of that stuff. But in the meantime, we go beyond the box score here and take at the series between the Brewers and the Reds. 3 one-run wins for the Brewers. We actually got a Josh Hader back-to-back on Monday and Tuesday here in this series, which was absolutely stunning. Again, only 5 back-to-backs for Josh Hader last year. And maybe the situation will necessitate more of Josh Hader in back-to-back settings because they don't have Corey Knebel and they don't have Jeremy Jeffress, who is going out on a rehab assignment, so maybe they'll have him back soon. But once again, Josh Hader, look, he's at his best when he's a multi-inning weapon on multiple days rest. But, Craig Counsell knows his personnel, knows his team. If he feels like he can use Hader back-to-back, then he'll do it. But once again, that was very surprising to me. Will kind of change the way I approach the Brewers when Hader pitches the day before. I don't think this becomes a regular thing by any means. However, with Hader using the back-to-back here early on in the season, very surprising to say the least. The Reds were 2 for 15 with runners in scoring position in the opener, so they probably shouldn't have gotten swept here. Only 6 at-bats with a runner in scoring position in the last 2 games. I talked about this with the Brewers last week, that they went high upside in the rotation, and I give them a lot of credit for that. They've been getting by with good command guys and good contact management plans. Well, this year they've gone to higher upside in the rotation. Ulyss Chassin is a guy with respectable strikeout rates, so it makes sense that he's there, but Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta, these guys do miss more bats than what they previously had last season, and they are tied for first in Major League Baseball right now in starting pitcher strikeouts with the Houston Astros. If you're tied with the Astros in any pitching category, that's a big win for you. So, Burns had the 12 last week. Freddie Peralta had 11 in yesterday's game where we were on the Reds. So if they add some swing and miss to these contact management plans, makes the Brewers even more exciting here for this season. But as I mentioned, 3 one-run wins for the Brewers here in this series. They've got 5 of them already. They are 5-0 in games decided by 1 run, 6-1 overall. Nobody else has more than 2 one-run wins with 0 losses so far. There are some teams that are 3-1 and stuff like that. But for the Brewers here, they had 5-0 already. Nobody else better than 2-0. So probably we'll be looking at some regression for them as we go forward. But, who knows when that'll actually show up. I do want to mention something here yesterday. And I will talk about this later in the show, but there have been 3 1-0 games already in Major League Baseball so far. There were 55 all of last year. We've been on the losing end of 2 of those 1-0 games. One of them was, actually both of them were yesterday. And one of them was this Brewers versus Reds game. And the reason why I want to touch on this is not to make excuses for giving out a losing bet. I think the Reds were the right side in that game anyway. But it's simply to say that if you don't evaluate your losses in something resembling this manner, baseball season is going to grind you down to a nub. Baseball season is it's a heavy commitment. It really, truly is. So when you look at yesterday's game here, and of course I watched the end of both of the 1-0 losses that I had yesterday, you look at this one specifically, Luis Castillo was fantastic. Gave up 1 hit. It was an RBI single. That was the game-winning hit for the Brewers there. Gave up 1 hit over 7 innings, 1 run, walked 4, struck out 9. He only allowed 1 batted ball over 94.7 miles per hour. So Castillo was very, very good in this game. He was exceptional in this game. It was a 100-mile-per-hour ground out from Mike Moustakas. The way that the Brewers scored their run was a walk, a balk, and a 72-mile-per-hour single. So Castillo basically, in the one run scoring opportunity that the Brewers really had in this game, got unlucky. Gave up a very soft single up the middle, a balk advanced the runner. Those things generally aren't going to happen. So we were on the wrong side, but Castillo did look like the right pitcher in this game. Now, on the flip side here, Freddie Peralta, look, it's a great stat line. 8 innings pitched, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 11 strikeouts. But for Peralta in this outing, he allowed 7 of the game's 10 hardest hit batted balls. The Reds were 2 for 7 on those batted balls of 96.8 plus miles per hour. They only managed 2 singles on them. Now, when you talk about batted balls of 95 plus miles per hour, as I've talked about a lot here on the Bettor's Box, you're talking about a batting average of about 500, a weighted on base average in the 650 range. Well, the Reds didn't get that. They got 2 measly singles. They were only 2 for 7. So they got a little bit unlucky on the hard contact that they did make here in this game. Now, Freddie Peralta did have 20 swings and misses, 15 on the fastball, so the fastball had good life. But when you look at the individual outcomes here, the Brewers probably should have lost that game. The Reds should have had more success on the hard contact that they did make, and the Brewers didn't make any hard contact except for that 1 batted ball. So, again, while I'm not making an excuse for the Reds losing this game, I'm not trying to cover my tracks for the ticket that didn't cash or anything like that. I'm simply saying that you want to evaluate your bets in something resembling this manner. For me, I'm going to dig really deep. I'm going to fade Freddie Peralta in his next start against the Reds. But again, you want to try and put these things into the proper perspective, because if you don't, with these ups and downs, you're going to have a very rough time of it this season. So that's why you do want to try to dig a little bit deeper with every bet that you make, and also why I'm going through and looking at the individual results for the starting pitchers here to try and get some angles in their next outings. Rockies and the Rays, right? The Rays take 2 out of 3 here in this one. Again, this was yesterday's 1-0 loss that we were on. The Rays stranded 11 runners in innings 6 through 10 to miss out on the sweep. Had a bases loaded, grounded into double play in the 6th, 2nd and 3rd in the 7th, 2nd and 3rd in the 8th, bases loaded in the 9th, 1st and 2nd in the 10th. None of those guys scored. And then Chris Iannetta hits an 0-2 homer in the 11th. First run in 22 innings for the Rockies in this series. So the Rays don't get the sweep. We're the right side in that game, though. This team is for real. Offensively, I do have some concerns still, but they've got great defense. They have an elite pitching staff. They are top 10 in exit velocity offensively right now, so they are making a good amount of hard contact. Again, I'm not sure how sustainable their offensive strategy is, and in particular when they go out on the road, I think that's where we can find some opportunities to fade the Rays. But again, in this series, the Rockies went 22 innings between scoring runs and only scored 2 of them in this series as well. So the Rays are definitely for real. I'll talk about that here again in a second. But everyone's going to look at Kyle Freeland in this series. There was money that came in on Blake Snell in that matchup against Kyle Freeland. Everyone's looking for regression from Kyle Freeland. Well, his regression, quote unquote, in this series, he worked 4 2/3, gave up 3 runs. 2 of them were earned on 3 hits. He walked 4, but he struck out 10 and had 16 swings and misses out of his 56 strikes. So the stat line is going to say that Freeland, did make it through 5 innings. The results are going to say that Freeland lost and that the Rays were the right side. They were, because Blake Snell was really good, struck out 13, had 25 swings and misses. But Kyle Freeland still threw the ball well in this game. There were some sequencing issues that popped up, and he had the 4 walks. So don't act like this is some victory lap for fading Kyle Freeland, because that wasn't really the case at all. Blake Snell was better than him, yes, but Freeland did not pitch bad in this outing. So, again, keep that in mind here, too. When we talk about degrees of regression, guys with low ERAs, higher FIPS, and higher XFIPs, maybe they're not going to pitch to that XFIP. They won't be as good, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be horrible. That was a situation there with Kyle Freeland where, again, everyone's going to look at it and say, oh, well, he lost, I think it was 5-1, and, oh, yeah, the market was right to go in against him. Maybe, but Freeland didn't pitch bad. So Freeland will get faded again in his next start coming up here at home next week. But, again, you want to keep this in the proper perspective and just not blindly fade a guy like Kyle Freeland, who is such an exit velocity wizard. One more series to take a look at here, this one also from the NL West, Diamondbacks and the Padres. And, look, I didn't jump on any of the games here in this series. I wish that I would have. But when you look at the first 2 games here, Merrill Kelly and Zach Greinke in the mound for the Diamondbacks, the Padres were overvalued in both of them. It just was what it was. Matt Strahm did not pitch well on the game that he worked. And then Eric Lauer touched up a little bit by Zach Greinke in the Diamondbacks offense. And then the Padres bullpen with Adam Warren just kind of blew that game out of proportion. But that's what you want to look for here early on in the season. Overvalued teams based off of perception, based off of results, something like that. Look, the Diamondbacks did score 18 runs in the first 2 games of this series, had 22 at-bats with a runner in scoring position. It sort of makes me wonder if Petco Park is playing more towards hitters now. I will say there's only been 6.7 runs per game in the Padres games here so far, the 7 home games. But the Padres have already given up 21 doubles. There were 11 home runs in this 3-game series. So maybe some hidden value playing overs in Padres games. They've done a good job from a pitching standpoint so far. For the most part, they've had some hiccups with individual guys. But I think that this is a situation where the Padres, I think that Petco Park is going to be an over venue as we go on into the summer here with more extra base hits, a better Padres offense. It's very important to keep in mind when you're looking at 3-year park factors or something like that, a lot of it has to do with the home team that plays there. And the Padres have been a terrible offense. Petco Park is always going to be lying low because of the perception that it's such a good pitcher's park. The hitting conditions aren't fantastic, but the Padres have a much better lineup than they've had the last several years. So if you're looking at 3- and 5-year park factors when it comes to totals betting, keep in mind that the park factor is heavily adjusted because of how that home team performs offensively. And if you've got a bad home offense, like the Padres have been the last several years, well, maybe there's some value in going over and playing against the perception of that park factor. So watch out for that here with the Padres as we go throughout the season, and maybe the Diamondbacks having so much success offensively, a sign of things to come out there on the left coast. Let's go through some random one-week notes here. How about the Astros? 29th in exit velocity so far this season. They've played against, I believe, Texas, and obviously the series that they had against the Rays. This is interesting because the Rockies are 30th in average exit velocity. They played against the Marlins and the Rays. The Rays are pretty good. I mean, when you watch this pitching staff, stuff for days. The relievers have ridiculous arsenals. Snell is very good. Morton is very good. Glass now has a type of arsenal that limits exit velocity. So early on in the season, you're going to have some outliers against the Rays where teams have really low exit velocity numbers like the Astros and the Rockies have here. I trust the Astros a lot more than the Rockies offensively, but just a sign here of how good this Rays pitching staff actually is. As I mentioned, 3-1-0 games already, 55 of them last year. I've been on the losing end of 2 of 3, which is highly frustrating, but again, early on in the season, we expect these things to kind of level off a little bit. Some big-time bullpen concerns league-wide. The Nationals' bullpen's given up 20 runs over 16 and a third innings. Trevor Rosenthal has been horrible. Doolittle and Bearclaw have been pretty good, but the supplemental guys for the Nationals' bullpen have not pitched well. Trevor Rosenthal among them. The Cubs' bullpen's given up 18 runs over 17 and a third. The Diamondbacks' bullpen's walked 18 and 27 and a third. Mariners, Cubs, Cardinals, all with walk issues here so far from their relievers. So a lot of bad bullpen pitching early on in the season. And, of course, the Pirates, a team I talked up a lot coming into the season, a team where I really do like their bullpen. I like the components that they have. They've had a lead going into the 7th inning of every game so far this year, and they're just 1-3 in those games. So the starters have been doing a good job. The relievers have not. Again, and I'll talk about this as we go forward here, but one of the things that you really want to try to do in baseball is put yourself in a position to win. And that means handicapping the starting pitching matchup, hoping that you're out in front, and then hoping that the bullpen takes care of its job if everybody's ready to go. I've talked a lot about bullpen usage so far in my article. I'm keeping a very close eye on that early on in the season here because I want teams to be able to deploy their best relievers. I'm handicapping the starting pitcher matchup because I want my team to be ahead, and then I'm hoping that team is able to finish it off. So we've had some first fives that have worked out. Yesterday we had the first 5 in both games where the full game would have been a loss. Maybe first fives are going to be more of a thing for me here this season. But again, a lot of bullpens in a state of flux so far this year. One other situational stat that I think is kind of interesting here. The Detroit Tigers, with a runner on third and less than 2 outs, they've only scored that runner 1 out of 10 times. Nobody else in baseball lower than 26.7%. The Tigers at 10%, obviously. Strikeouts are up again league-wide this year. That will probably be another trend. It's been a 3-year trend already. Less than 50% of men on third with less than 2 outs scored last year. That's the lowest it's been in a very, very long time. This year it's down another full percentage point. I think 48.6% league-wide. But the Tigers are really bad in this area. So I think offensively, maybe they get a little bit of positive regression here simply by driving those guys in from a situational standpoint. Not a stat I will track a lot, but just one that I came across here today where the Tigers, who have gotten some very good pitching here so far this season, could be maximizing their offense just a little bit more. I'll do some exit velocity updates and stuff like that next week once we've got a larger sample size of data for those types of things. All right, let's go down the lines here with our updating lines segment. These are going to be off of bookmaker numbers because that's just what my odds screen is on right now with openers. So, that's what I look at for closers. And you look at Tuesday, and a lot of big favorites were coming down. And this has been a trend early on in the season. And, in fact, big underdogs have done very well so far in the months of March and April. Last year, it was all about heavy chalk in the early part of the year. This year, the underdogs do have a lot of bark to them. We saw Max Scherzer come down from minus 206 to minus 187. Masahiro Tanaka came down about 25 cents from minus 250 to 225. Marcus Stroman, minus 211 to 180. Hyun-Jin Ryu from minus 176 to minus 150. Again, we're talking about big underdogs here. We saw the Phillies money against Scherzer Orioles money against Stroman. I think it was Tigers money against Tanaka. Giants money against Ryu. So again, 3 of those 4 teams not expected to do much this season, but dogs are the flavor of the month when it comes to April. So not a big surprise to see money coming in against those big favorites. It was a trend that we saw on Wednesday as well. But one big favorite that did go up was Justin Verlander against Shelby Miller, Astros and Rangers in that one. Shelby Miller missing all of last season with a myriad of injuries. Verlander, of course, very, very good. So that one, I think, when we see Verlander and Cole, and those are the 2 primary guys for the Astros right now, money going in on both of them here so far. Verlander's line going up. Cole got steamed quite a bit on Wednesday. So we'll see that with the Astros. I'm not sure about McHugh, Miley, and Peacock, but Verlander and Cole will definitely get that respect in the betting markets. We did see that Blake Snell money on the Rays over Kyle Freeland and the Rockies. I was curious to see what would happen with that game because Kyle Freeland, an ERA to xFIP regression guy. Blake Snell, the same thing, plus an 88% left on base percentage. Got rocked in his first start a little bit against Houston. Pitched very well on Tuesday. Market did decide to line up with the Rays as opposed to the Rockies in that battle of 2 guys in line for regression. Wednesday, we saw Luis Castillo money hit the board against the Brewers. That's about a 20-cent move there in that one. We were in front of that line move, of course, but the Reds not able to finish that one off. Castillo will take money fairly often here this season with a big ERA to xFIP split from last year. So money coming against John Lester, that will continue. Start after start, money will come in against John Lester. Still pitched fairly decent in that game. Has pitched fairly well in his 2 starts so far, but money will keep coming in on him throughout the course of the year. Some more big favorites that came down on Wednesday. Ross Stripling, once again, the Dodgers against Derek Holland. Money came in against Corey Kluber to go on the White Sox and Carlos Rodon. That was the correct move there. And then Jonathan Loaisiga for the Yankees. Money came in against him to back Matt Boyd. Matt Boyd back-to-back 10 strikeout games here to start the year. Pitched very well in 2 very, very difficult road environments. Kind of pissed off about it, truthfully, because I wanted to be able to back him at home. But now his prices at home are just going to be probably too big for us to take advantage of after good showings on the road in Toronto and Yankee Stadium. Again, 2 top 5 parks in fly ball and line drive weighted on base average last year, and Boyd pitched pretty well in both of them. Once again, as I mentioned, saw money hit the board on Garrett Cole. That was against Mike Minor and the Rangers. Tough start here for the Astros so far. Money came in against Marco Estrada. We were on that one for the first 5 yesterday. That was a winner for us. He pitched well again. Back him at home, fade him on the road. Pretty simple formula here for Marco Estrada, but in his 2 starts at Oakland Coliseum, he's been very, very good, and the market hates him. So I have to post my article around 10:30. The first 5 went from plus 110 or plus 115 up to plus 120. Some places with a plus 125. Again, you don't have to take the plays right away when I talk about them in the article if you think the line is going to move. That was one that moved on Estrada. I mentioned that in the article to wait that one out. So if you did, you grabbed an extra 10 cents of profit there on that one. Saw Herman Marquez money come in on the Rockies against Charlie Morton and the Rays. A wrong side winner for the market there. Marquez did pitch really, really well, but the Rays just squandering so many opportunities late in that game. So money, I guess, was right based on the outcome, but I still think the Rays clearly the right side there in that one. Thursday, it's been pretty quiet overall in terms of line moves. Saw money hit the board on Trevor Bauer. That's against Aaron Sanchez and the Toronto Blue Jays. I get the move on Bauer. I certainly understand that. Hopefully he's able to throw a complete game tonight because the bullpen's still shaky. But the Indians lineup is just so bad. Total of 7 with heavy under juice today. It's a rough look right now for the Indians offense, and I don't know when it actually gets better because Francisco Lindor out until May. Carlos Gonzalez will be up soon, but he's got the Coors Field factor, and he hasn't been a great hitter the last few years either. It's a tough look right now for the Indians, and backing them with a minus 180, minus 190 price is very scary. Bauer is legit, though. There's no question about that. I wouldn't do it today, but again, obviously, big money coming in here today on Trevor Bauer. Like I said, very quiet out there in the marketplace so far this morning. It seems like we've had a little bit more of a wait-and-see approach in the MLB betting market. Maybe people waiting on lineups or something like that. We have seen some of the easy ERA and xFIP moves, but not as many overnight moves as I thought we would see this season. Lines kind of moving around early afternoon as those lineups start to come out. In any event, my pick for today is the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Very rough start to the season for the Angels here so far. But I think today is a very good matchup for them. They'll send out Matt Harvey against Edinson Volquez and the Rangers. Rangers are making a lot of hard contact this year, so I will give them credit for that. But now they go from home to a bad offensive ballpark in Anaheim. Matt Harvey, I was pretty impressed with the StatCast data I saw in his first start here against Oakland. Worked up with an elevated fastball, down with the secondaries, really good at limiting hard contact. Just didn't have the strikeouts. He only had one of them, but really in control of the game from a command standpoint. Did have some fastballs that kind of stayed up in the zone and hung high a little bit. Oakland won't chase those. Texas will. So I guess it's a very good matchup here for Matt Harvey. And for Edinson Volquez, he had 4 outs in his start against Chicago, including a double play on 99-plus mile-per-hour batted balls. That saved him from a much worse stat line. Very poor command, 94.1 miles per hour average exit velocity. That would have been bottom 5 in Major League Baseball last year. Velocity usually comes for a pitcher first. Command will come second if it comes back at all. So now is the time to jump on Edinson Volquez. I guess it's a very fair price to take the Angels. Rangers with some bullpen fatigue as well, which is why I'm happy to look at the full game, especially with Anaheim having yesterday off. So give me the Angels here. It's in the minus 130, minus 135 range with Matt Harvey on the bump against Edinson Volquez and the Texas Rangers. All right, for the weekend ahead here, got a lot of things to talk about. Usually I won't cover 6 series, but again, with some limited data here early on in the season for the Beyond the Box Score segment, we'll take a look at the weekend ahead in depth, and we'll start with the AL Central slap fight here between the Royals and the Tigers. Again, remember the keys I talked about at Comerica Park in my betting tips article on the Tigers for this season. It is a huge outfield. Fly ball pitchers are going to fare very, very well at Comerica Park this season. Also, the Tigers are a very right-handed heavy lineup. So if they face a right-handed pitcher that fares better against righties than lefties, they probably won't do a whole lot against that guy. As luck would have it, I'm on the first 5 under here today with Jake Junis and Spencer Turnbull. Turnbull, a guy who worked up with the fastball a lot in his first start. I think that plays very well to Comerica Park, especially with the chilly and damp conditions that we'll have today. The Tigers played a lot of day games in April last year, trying to avoid the bad weather at night. Probably the case again here this year. And also, I know the White Sox, I think I heard yesterday in the Indians broadcast, they're supposed to play 11 or 12 day games in a row here the rest of the way in April. So while today's game was postponed, the White Sox are going to play a lot of day games for whatever that's worth. But in any event, you've got this Royals-Tigers series here where I don't expect a whole lot of runs. The Royals' outfield defense is very, very strong. They've got a big, spacious outfield to play with here. I would look at unders in this series. You got that Junis and Turnbull matchup tonight. Lopez and Matt Moore coming up tomorrow, or actually on Wednesday, the weather day off incorporated for this series. And then Brad Keller and Tyson Ross on Thursday. That's the one I'd worry about from an under standpoint because those are 2 ground ball guys. Both Keller and Ross tilt to the ground ball side. That doesn't play as well at Comerica Park. I don't know what that total will look like in that game, but if we get a couple of low-scoring affairs in the first 2 games, maybe we get some value to come back on the over for that Thursday game with Keller and Ross. Keller, a guy I am looking for some regression out of here, not necessarily at Comerica Park, not a great park for power, but when Keller goes to road venues that are better for hitting home runs, I will look to fade the Royals starter at that point in time. So keep an eye out for that one. We were on Jose Barrios against him earlier in the week here, so we'll see if we get some more opportunities to go against Brad Keller and that unsustainably low home run to fly ball percentage. The Nationals and Mets meet again this weekend. Steven Strasburg, Noah Syndergaard today, Patrick Corbin, Steven Matz on Saturday, Max Scherzer, Zach Wheeler on Sunday. Once again, the weather day off incorporated into the schedule here for these 2 teams. We saw Patrick Corbin get heavy steam in his first start for the Nationals. We'll see if that comes here again this weekend against Steven Matz. Right now, though, you can only back the Nationals for the first 5. I mean, their bullpen has been disastrous so far. They should have lost again yesterday, but David Robertson did a Nationals bullpen impression, and pretty bad there in that one for the Phillies. You can only play the Nats in the first 5 right now. Obviously, with Strasburg, Corbin, and Scherzer, not a bad time to be looking to do that. I still trust Anibal Sanchez and the exit velocity metrics that he had last year, so he's a guy for the first 5 you may want to keep an eye on next week. But, for this series, look, the Mets doing a very good job here so far with, bullpen usage. They've done a good job with their starting pitchers as well. The Nationals are just in a tough spot. I mean, I don't think Davey Martinez is a very good manager. Trey Turner is already out. Their starting staff is so strong, but their bullpen is so bad. The Nationals are very tough for me to take right now. Not to say I'm going to be on the Mets a lot in this series, but just the Nationals, again, first 5s are nothing. I mean, they're just kind of toxic at this point in time. The A's take on the Astros here. The A's leave the safety of home. They'll do so with Frankie Montas and his newfound splitter in Game 1 against Colin McHugh, Aaron Brooks and Wade Miley in the middle game, Mike Fiers and Brad Peacock in the series finale. So Oakland avoids Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole, who will both face the Yankees next week. The A's pen, pretty iffy here so far. The Astros not really hitting a whole lot. Again, as I mentioned, they're 29th in exit velocity here so far. So I'm sure they'll get things back on track. Will they do it here against this Oakland staff? I'm not sure, but Oakland is so well-conditioned to play at home. They've got extreme fly ball guys like Estrada, like Fiers. They've got the ground ball guys like Anderson. Oakland Coliseum, and I mentioned this in my write-up here today, talking about the under in the getaway day game between the Red Sox and the A's. Last year, Oakland Coliseum allowed a 180 batting average on ground balls. Part of that has to do with how good Oakland's infield defense is. A lot of it probably has to do with the moist marine conditions there in Oakland. The grass is probably pretty thick. I wouldn't be surprised if they cut it a little bit high, a little bit of gamesmanship there because they've got such a fly ball heavy lineup. These are good advantages for Oakland. It's a big, spacious ballpark, a lot of foul territory, so extreme fly ball guys have success. When they go out on the road, they lose those advantages. And Minute Maid Park is a pretty good pitcher's park. For as good as the Astros have been offensively here over the last few years, Minute Maid still trends to the pitcher's side. So maybe the Astros or the A's don't have as many of those issues here in this set of road games, but it will be something I will watch going forward here. When they're in when they're in ballparks that are very tailored to offense, the A's will have to out-hit the opposition, and those will be over venues. Texas is one where a lot of ground balls go for hits with that sun-baked infield. Obviously the AL East ballparks. When the A's do go to some of these areas that aren't going to be good for their pitching staffs, or for their pitching staff, I should say, I think it's going to be one of those things where we can get some value playing A's overs and probably fading the A's as well. I don't think Minute Maid Park is that place, but I will be watching it very closely here this weekend. Cubs and the Brewers. Can the Brewers keep this up? Winning all these one-run games, getting all the timely hits, the comebacks, the outs from their relievers, all that type of stuff. And, will the Cubs figure anything out? I mean, their starting staff has not been good. Their bullpen's been atrocious. The offense has done its part for the most part, but the Cubs just off to a very slow start here. Jose Quintana, Brandon Woodruff in the first one, Cole Hamels, Corbin Burns in the second one, Kyle Hendricks and Zach Davies in the third one here. Again, I don't know where the Cubs are at mentally right now. I know where the Brewers are, and they feel like they can't do any wrong. If the Brewers start to have some bullpen regression, if the starters start to get tagged a little bit, maybe that kind of changes the dynamics for them. I don't think I'll have too much investment in this series overall, but we're kind of seeing why the PECOTA projections were so low on the Cubs and why a lot of people out there were low on the Cubs as well. And for the Brewers, again, more upside in this rotation than they've had the last 2 years. That's come to fruition already, and they're figuring it out with the bullpen, despite some of those big losses. Craig Counsell's a great manager. This might be the best front office in baseball right now. You got to give a lot of credit to the Brewers for what they're doing, and we'll see if they can keep it up here this weekend against their arch nemesis, the Cubs. Red Sox and Diamondbacks. Rick Porcello in the first one against Zach Godley. David Price, Luke Weaver in the second one. To be determined for the Red Sox against Merrill Kelly on Sunday. The Red Sox will use Chris Sale next Tuesday when they actually make their home opener. I'm going to fade Rick Porcello again here. I can tell you that right now. I still believe in Zach Godley. Zach Godley is a guy with an ERA to xFIP split. Maybe that line moves a little bit. I will fade Porcello in that first game. After that, I'm not sure what will happen. But I think we'll get a very fair price. Probably Arizona as a home dog with Godley against Porcello. So I will definitely be looking at that one in tomorrow's article. One thing that is pretty interesting here is that the Diamondbacks have utilized a lot of platoon advantages so far. A lot of right-handed hitters against left-handed pitchers, left-handed hitters against right-handed pitchers. Usually, that's a big boost for an offense because a lot of pitchers have the big platoon splits. But something I've been thinking about here a little bit more lately, with the ever-changing landscape of pitch usage in Major League Baseball, pitchers are using fastballs a lot less often. And a big reason why teams are going to more curveballs, sliders, and cutters is to cut down on the platoon advantage. Yes, it has something to do with exit velocity. Yes, it has something to do with limiting home runs. But it's also to keep guys from getting raked over the coals when they're a right-handed pitcher against a left-handed batter. You throw cutters that dive inside, sliders, same thing, curveballs to get them out in front. Everybody in the major leagues can hit a fastball. It's just the nature of the beast. Noticed as I went and looked today, and again, it's only a week, but of the top 10 teams with platoon advantages, the Indians are the only one that I think has a legitimate shot at the playoffs. The Braves, the second team in that department. But a lot of teams using platoon advantages are the Diamondbacks, Orioles, Blue Jays, Rangers, Kansas City. A lot of teams that don't really have playoff prospects. And part of that is because they don't have enough good hitters to play every day. So I'm kind of curious to see this dynamic play out a little bit here this season. Usually speaking, whether it's daily fantasy or betting, you look for those big platoon advantages with a lot of these starting pitchers. Maybe those are getting cut down a little bit with the changing pitch usage. So that's something I'll be watching closely. And I noticed it here with the Diamondbacks and their platoon advantages so far. They were very good offensively in that series against the Padres, but we'll see how it does here against the Red Sox because they're getting a righty in Porcello, a lefty in Price, and then obviously who knows who will start on Sunday. Maybe somebody like a Hector Velasquez or Brian Johnson or somebody like that. But something popped into my head here today while going through the notes for the show. And then finally, I'm curious to see how the Diamondbacks adjust to year 2 in the humidor because early on last year, it was a big learning curve for Arizona. This year, they should have a lot more home data that they can rely on. Godley was a guy who had very big walk splits between home and road last season with the humidor and without the humidor. I think he should be a little bit better in that regard here this season. And the Diamondbacks pitchers in general should be more accustomed to the conditions. So that'll be something to watch in their home series early on as well. Finally, one more series to look at here. The Dodgers in Colorado to take on the Rockies. That Rockies offense limps into Coors Field to face the Dodgers. Kenta Maeda, Tyler Anderson in the first one. Walker Buehler, John Gray in the second one. Julio Urias and Chad Bettis on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. I like to look for situational angles coming out of Sunday Night Baseball. The Dodgers do go to St. Louis. The Rockies host the Braves. There may be an angle to fade the Dodgers on Monday with the long trip out to St. Louis. Coming out of the altitude, maybe they don't use Kenley Jansen in this series because he had the heart condition last year that kept him from going to Colorado. He's going to give it a try this year. But obviously, we'll see how that plays out. I'm sure the Dodgers would like to avoid using him if they possibly can. So maybe a fade of the Dodgers on Monday. We'll see what the line looks like and what the pitching setup looks like. But as far as this series goes, Tyler Anderson did not look good in his start against the Marlins. A lot of hard contact, a lot of doubles. That's very concerning for me going into this start. Walker Buehler had very limited appearances in spring training, got knocked around in his first regular season start. Does he get it back on track? John Gray, a positive regression candidate, high ERA, low xFIP, some tough home road splits for Gray. So maybe we don't see that line move come in on him, but he did have 10 strikeouts in that start against the Marlins. So the swing and miss stuff was there. We'll see if the command follows suit. An interesting series to say the least, especially with that Rockies offense that was so bad in Miami and so bad in Tampa Bay, now getting back at home to the hitter-friendly conditions of Coors Field. So a lot of stuff here today on the Bettor's Box. Again, if you want to subscribe to the notes, Adam@bangthebook.com is the way to do that. Let me know that you want to get on the mailing list, and I will add you to that. No UFC this week, so no segment with Christian Pina. I'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Bettor's Box, and then on Tuesday, with Brian Blessing to chat about the Masters and also the NHL playoffs. So that'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And remember that you'll never strike out when you're in the Bettor's Box.